Okay, so this demo is going to be a recap of what we did last week, but I'm just going to show a couple things I do in Unity as well as setting up triggers and animations to fire off when you hit specific collision boxes and things like that in your project. If we go to, or first of all, you should install ProBuilder if you haven't. Under Window, Package Manager, ProBuilder, install that. I already have mine installed, so we're going to go ahead and load that up. ProBuilder, we'll go to our ProBuilder window. Again, anytime I'm using ProBuilder, I always like to dock it kind of like right there, just so I have it next to my scene. Additionally, you're going to want to open your animation window, which you can get at Window, Animation, Animation, right? I like to dock this kind of in the middle, right below my scene, like right about there, right above my project panel and right below my actual scene. So I got my inspector window on the side right here, and then I've got my animation window and my project. Okay. Okay, first thing I need to do is create my floor of my project. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's just make this and right here, we'll just say this is our ground that we're going to use. Also, so Unity runs as efficiently as possible right now, I'm going to turn off my bake lighting. You might have noticed it was trying to bake that. To do that, I'm going to go to Window, Rendering, Lighting Settings, and just go ahead and turn off your baked lighting as well as the baked data. You want to clear that out. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do is turn down that directional light, especially if you're using ProBuilder, everything will look white. So you just want to bring that down a little bit so you can see what you're doing. Okay. All right. So the main asset that I use that's free off the asset store to put into your project that basically gives you all these collision properties pretty easily is if I go to the asset store and type in collision propagator, I go here, collision propagators, there we go, collision propagators. This is a free asset on the asset store, but it's super killer for just setting up transitions, things like turning objects on and off, playing animations in objects, playing, accessing booleans, playing sounds, all that kind of stuff, all through collisions. This one's super killer. I use it all the time. Really good add-on, and it's free. So I'm going to import that into my project. I'll bring that in. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do, and that's under this Itchy Owl, who is the developer, Itchy Owl. The next thing I'm going to do is get my first-person controller just from standard assets. So I'm going to type in standard assets, and I'm going to get that FPS controller right here. And we'll go ahead and import this really quickly. Funny. Press import. And we'll let that do its thing. And this might take a couple minutes to get in there. Someday. Just wasting precious disk space right now. Wasting disk space. Awesome. Okay. Once that animates, you might get some errors down here. Don't worry about those. Unity already fixes those. Okay, so in here, I'm going to go back to my scene. I need to go down into my standard assets and access my first-person controller, which you can find at Characters, First-Person Controller, prefabs and just drag your FPS controller into your scene. This will be our first person controller we can travel around in. And remember, whichever way that the blue arrow is facing is forward for your character. That's where your game's going to start. So you just want to make sure that your scene is properly aligned to reflect that. So let me just make sure this is all good. I'll put my player right in the center of where I start, which I believe is right about there. Okay, good. Looking downfield, great. Also, because the first-person controller already has a camera attached to it, you can go ahead and delete the main camera out of your scene. Okay, so you should just have your FPS controller, directional light, cube you made in ProBuilder for your floor, and this itchy owl plugin down here. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is, let's say we were going to make a door that's going to open in Unity. So as my FPS, my first-person character goes towards the door opens, and then I can go through, right? Well, first thing we need to do is obviously make some walls that we can't get through. So I'm going to go ahead and make a wall here really quickly. Do this really quickly. Come here. A little smaller. Pull this up. Okay, there's one section of the wall. And I'll go ahead and name that wall. This will be floor. And I'm going to duplicate that wall and make another wall as well. Let's put that right here. Let's put that over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the wall again and make that my door, which will be this object. Just pull it up a little bit, shrink it down so it fits right in this space, right about there. All right. So there's my door. Okay. So I'm going to have this door open kind of like a cargo door, where it's just going to go up and I'm going to go through, right? So let's just put my door right here. First, I'm going to make a different material for this door so I can at least see it. So I'm just going to come into my assets, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to create material. We'll call this door. Okay. Store material, I'm going to drag onto my door, and I'm going to make this like a red door. Okay. So now if I play my game, I should just be able to run into the door, and that's it, right? Can't really do anything. Can't get through it, right? Okay. I want to make it so when I come towards this door, boom, open sesame, it opens, and I can go. Okay, so to do that, we need to use a collider to act as a hitbox that we can trigger events from. And we just change the size of this door a little bit, right about there. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make a collider. I can just duplicate this door. I'll bring it out here a little bit. This a little bit bigger. So this volume that I made with ProBuilder is going to act as my trigger. I'm going to go ahead and take the mesh renderer off, but I'm just going to keep this volume as my mesh collider. Okay. We're also going to make it, because it's ProBuilder, it needs to be convex, and we're going to make it a trigger. So when I run into this thing, it should theoretically act as a trigger for my door. Now what I need to do is I need to actually apply the scripts to this object to make it my trigger, right? And we can call this door trigger if you want. And let's go ahead and call this our door so we have it. Okay, so on my door trigger, first thing I need to do to make sure this object has the actual script it needs to access the animations on my door is I'm going to go into this Itchy Owl plugin right here. And they've got this really good script, or series of scripts actually, inside their collision propagators. And if we go down to scripts, implementations, 3D, and then native events, they have this trigger enter script, which is really, really nice. So in my door trigger volume, if I apply this trigger enter script to it, oh, oops, trigger enter script, not trigger event. Technically, you could use event, or you could also use exit, but they'll just behave differently however you want to set them up. I think trigger event actually, if I look at the door trigger, I think event lets you set up different filters for entering, exiting, different things like that, basically different events, whereas enter and exit just work on entering and exiting the volume. Okay, the next thing I need to do is I need to create a layer for my character to exist in. So I'm going to click on my character, because if we look at this door volume right here in this trigger enter propagator script, it gives me a couple things. First, use layer mask. Yeah, we want to do that, but we need to tell it a layer that our player is going to exist on. So we'll make a player layer for it. Okay. You can also set some booleans for one shot and auto destruct, which is really nice having that, meaning they could just hit it once and something activates and then the volume goes away, so it'll kill itself, which is really great. But we won't use that for now, but those are there if you need them. So I'm going to come up to my layers. If I click on my FPS controller, up here we have our layers for objects in Unity. You'll see in here we just have the default ones that they give us. We're going to go ahead and add one for our player. So I'm just going to go to layer 9, call it player. Go back to my FPS controller, and I'm going to set his layer as player. Okay, and know this object owner. Okay. Next, on my door trigger, in its layer mask, I'm going to change the layer mask for the player. So when player hits me, something happens. Right? Oh wait, you know what? Was it this one? Hold on. Oh, you know what? I'm actually using the wrong events. Hold on. I need to use the Unity ones, not the native ones. So I'm going to go remove component. I go into Unity, and it's actually this one, trigger enter propagator U. Make sure you're using the Unity event. Sorry, I had the native events. The native events, I believe, are native C# events, whereas, because this is built outside of MonoDevelop, so it's his own abstract that he has, which is kind of nice, which means it'll pretty much be compatible with everything. But to make sure you're using the Unity ones, just come into Unity, grab that. There you go. And we're going to say use layer mask, and that layer mask is going to be player.
And
now,
what would the collision enter propagator?
Hold on, I'll get to you in a second. Let me finish this, and then we'll go. So under trigger enter right here, the list is empty right now. We need to actually make a list right here. I didn't delete this one. Under the door, right, we're going to come here. We need to tell it, hey, our door is the object that we want to activate, right? Now, there's a couple ways you could actually use this collider. So right now, we just have an object there. And let's say our object, like this door, had no animation, right? Let's just say we wanted to just disappear when we hit it, right? So the first thing you can do is just by accessing the door, you could say, hey, in our function, let's go ahead and set an activated state of nothing, right? So theoretically, if I press play, see if this works, I walk towards the door just disappears, right? So that's one way we could use the trigger, just having the door disappear, right? But we want to make it cooler, right? We want to have it so the door actually animates and we play an animation when we tell it to, okay? So to do that, first we need to make an animation for this door, okay? I'm going to come into my door, and you'll notice in this little animation tab that I docked in my window here, I'm going to go ahead and say, it says to begin animating door, create an animator and an animation clip. I'm going to say just create. It's going to ask me, what do you want this to be? I'm going to put it in my desktop. And this is animation triggers, assets. We'll put it in here. We'll call it door open. All right. And I'm going to save it. I just saved that in the root of my folder. So if I go here, we have this door animation clip. But right now, there's no keyframes to do anything with this door, right? So if we want it to do something, first thing I'm going to do is click on my door, which I have the animation applied to, and then I'm just going to go down my timeline here to probably 1 second in. I'm going to hit my record key, And I'm just going to move this door up like so. And you'll see when I do that, it automatically creates those keyframes at the end of this timeline and gives you a default set keyframe at the beginning. So if I go back and play it, or just scrub the timeline, you'll see the door just comes up, right? Now that could be anything. That could be a door that swings open, a door that comes up, a door that goes into the ground, whatever you want that to be. That animation, it's up to you how you want to animate it, right? For now, we'll just have it go up, okay? Now, and you know what? Let's just make sure it goes up a little higher to make sure that we clear the play space. There we go. So it'll be floating in the air, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Now, if you look at the door open animation in our main that we created, this is the one that we just created. Right now, it's set to loop time. So if I play my game, it's just going to sit there and constantly play this animation over and over and over again, right? And we still have the other script applied, so if I just walk towards it, it should, oh, disappears, right? But we need to change that. We want it to play that door opening animation when I hit the trigger, okay? So to do that, first thing I need to do is go into, if I click on door, anytime we create an animation using this animation tab, we're going to get this animator component attached to our object. So you'll see right here, we have an animator component. It creates a controller with the same name as the object, so door, gives you this little door controller. And if I double click on this door controller, you'll notice that in here I have one animation, it's the one that we created, and it's door open, right, which was this guy that we created in this animation clip right here, okay? So we've got door open, and that's it, right? So right now what we need to do is we need to make a door static animation, because right now the only thing that exists for this object in its animation is just door open. So I'm always just going to play that because that's all it knows, right? We need to say, no, you also have like a door closed state that we're going to add. So to do that, very easily inside my animation clips down here, see how I have this door open samples right here? If I just click that, oh, click door, and then click door open, and then go to create new clip, I'm going to make a new one in the same folder, and I'm just going to call it door closed. And this animation isn't going to do anything. It's just going to be a closed door, like how it sits on the scene right now. You could call it door idle as well, just whatever you want. I'm just calling it door closed. All right, so to change the animations in here, we need to give it some keyframes to tell it over time to do nothing, basically, right? You just need to give it some keyframes to tell it. Even though there's nothing in the timeline, if there's nothing there, there's no animation, right? You need to tell it, no, let's give you an exact thing to do while you're doing nothing in this time, right? So to do that, we're going to add a property of its position. I'm just going to add that in the scene. So right now, if I play that, its position is it just sits. That's all it does. It doesn't animate, it just sits, right? So now, if I go to my animator, I've got two in here. I've got door open and I've got door closed, okay? Now, we need to change the default state because right now, when we play the game, the door just opens, right? We need to change that default to this door closed, where I'd rather have you just doing nothing when you're doing that, right? So I'm going to click door closed, right click it, I'm going to make it transit, or no, I'm sorry, I'm going to set it as its default state. So when it starts at door closed. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make a transition from door closed to door open. So what we want to do is on our door, when you start, right, you're sitting at door closed, right? And that can loop for whatever we want, right? Until I tell you I want you to play door open, I got to assign a variable to this little transition here to then play this door opening animation, okay? Now to do that, inside this animator, we have these little transitions, right? So when it starts, it just plays this idle, and then it goes to our door open state, right? But right now, we have no conditions set to this transition to tell it what to do. It just automatically says, I'm going to go from this animation to this animation to this animation until you tell it, no, don't do that. It'll keep doing that, right? So what we need to do is on this transition, first thing we need to do is uncheck has exit time, and then it won't do the has exit time, which is basically play this animation until it has some type of condition. Now to add a condition, we need to add a parameter, which is in these two little objects up here. We have layers and parameters. Layers are used mostly for characters, character-driven stuff in Unity. If you have a character with upper body animations, lower body animations, that's where you're going to use layers most of the time, or objects with multi-parts to them. Parameters is where we use to actually apply string values to control the animations. Okay, and this is kind of touching on coding a little bit, but in a very, very, very limited way. Okay, so in here, we're going to come up here and add a trigger. We want to trigger this animation, and we're going to call it open. All right. Now, if I look down at my conditions list, there's nothing in there. We need to add open to that list, and because there's nothing in there except open, it's just automatically going to open in this list. So basically, what we're saying is play door close until I say open, then play door open. Right? It's essentially like super high level. That's what it's telling it what to do. Okay. So now we need to tell that trigger to do the same thing. First, let's double check our animations. I'm going to come down to my door closed. That's looping, that's fine. But our door open, that's looping. We don't want that to happen. We just want it to open once. We're going to uncheck that. So it just plays once. Okay. If we go back to our scene, we're going to have our door trigger, which is right here. I need to change its collider, because right now we're saying, hey, activate a door or deactivate a door. We don't want that, right? We want to remove that. We're going to add a new transition of the door. And I'm going to access the animator of the door. And I'm going to say, hey, we're going to set the trigger that we set to play a certain animation. And that trigger is open, right? That's that string value that we wrote in there. So we're accessing the door, and we're saying play open, animation set trigger, okay? Now, the reason it's set trigger is if we look at our door, and I go back to its animator controller, by default, when you set triggers, they're not on. The triggers are off. They're on when you set the trigger, right? So we're saying, hey, set the trigger, right? By default, they're inactive, right? So we need to tell it, no, activate, and then it'll stop, right? So if I come to my scene, and I play it, now I've got my door, everything's great. If I walk up to it, boom, the door opens. All right, it's just going to sit there forever. Okay. Now the cool thing is, when you set up these triggers, is you can add a variety of things to happen to this particular event while it's happening. They're kind of set up like buttons, so when you click a button, you can have multiple triggers kind of fire off. This trigger is the same way, right? We have this trigger enter propagator use script, right? We've got our door, we're accessing the trigger of its animation. Well, let's say we wanted to add a sound to the door, so when the door actually opened, it played a sound. Well, we could just I grabbed some sounds already from online, but we have this creaky door sound right here. I'm going to go ahead and add that into my scene. Doesn't really fit with my hanger door, but that'll work. And I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Because this is a sound that exists in our scene, what I'm basically saying is, hey, when you turn on, it already has this preset play on awake. It'll just play the sound once when it goes on. So to access that in our trigger, I'm just going to add another property. Oops. I'm going to drag this creaky door sound into my runtime. And for the function, I'm going to say, let's just make you active. So when I hit the trigger, the door opens and it plays the sound. So let's go ahead and try that out. Press play. Walk towards my door. There it goes. Boom, I'm in the level, right? And the reason I love using these triggers so much is once you set up like a trigger box like this, you can literally just duplicate it all over your scene. And oh, there we go, there's another one. And I can call this, I don't know, event trigger, right? And on this trigger, now that I have this new one, I can delete these properties. Sorry, right here. And I can use this for, because it's already attached to my player. If the player enters it, something happens. But now that we already have this done, we have a volume that we can use. If we needed to edit the volume, we could. But now that we have that volume, I could say, okay, I've got this heartbeat sound that I found. Put that in my scene, and I'm going to uncheck that. All right. I could say, hey, new volume, when the player hits you, let's go ahead and make another event here. Let's go ahead and add our heartbeat. And we're going to say game object, set active Boolean. We're going to make you active, right? Now, a lot of times to keep it organized, if it's player events like a heartbeat or something like that, you'd probably just put it under your FPS controller, the sound, and keep it off, but turn it on when you need it kind of thing. So if it's like player stressed out, then you can start your heartbeat kind of thing, or if it hits certain triggers in your level, you play that sound. But if I come to my heartbeat, let's go ahead and first let's turn it to loop. It's already on play on awake, so if we play it now, walk up to the door. Right. So just by setting up 2 triggers, even though there's nothing happening in this scene, literally just blocks, it already added some emotion to the scene without anything really happening, right? Now, I love to use these event triggers as jump scares also. So let's just say we wanted to add a jump scare, and we'll just call it jump scare trigger. And again, I'm just duplicating the same event trigger that I already had. We just put this down a little bit, like right here, and we won't go crazy. We'll just put we'll put a particle effect in there. So 3, let's go, where's effects? We'll use particle system, and we'll just make it super huge and pre-warmed, and its size we'll just make really big, so all this smoke appears, right? Okay, we'll just call this ghost smoke, right? Okay, so I'm going to move this down a little bit, probably right about there. Okay, now when I hit this jump scare trigger, I wanted to turn this ghost smoke on and attach a sound to it. We already got this little Jason Voorhees sound that we got offline, so let's go ahead and add that. So let's put our Jason Voorhees sound in our scene. Let's go ahead and turn it off. Play on awake is fine. It's turned off. Let's go ahead and click on our jump scare trigger, and hold on, and then we'll come in here because we're activating it. So we're turning it off so we can activate it. So we're saying, hey, let's use Jason and game object. Let's set active. We're going to turn you on, right? So now I'm going to say, okay, play. Oh wait, whoops. Let's go. We still got our particle effect there. Let's also turn on that particle effect too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to turn off my ghost smoke, right? I'm going to add that to my jump scare. So let's go ahead and add ghost smoke, and we'll turn you on as well. All right, so we'll press play. Come into my haunted house. Walk forward. My heartbeat. Walk forward a little more. All right. So very, very easily you can set up these triggers and just reuse them for all kinds of stuff that are happening in your game. You know, just using the same methodology as the door, you could set up any object to do any type of animation, set up a Boolean for that animation to play at certain times and all that, and just access it through those events. Very, very simple. The exact same way the door is triggered. So super, super powerful. Use it for your projects. I'll take this up online and so you guys can download it and use it if you need it. Highly recommend using those plugins, the free ones. They work out great. And